The Hand of God and TV News compares news media reports with what God says He is planning to allow in future history of humanity. Many in the TV news are talking about America being drawn into a World War III with Russia and Europe with nuclear war as a possibility. The good news from God's war map is that nuclear war happens after a massive World War III sized ground war in the Middle East. Today we ask this question: will America be pulled into World War III? Now, why do we ask that? Most on the street, if they ask this question, would quickly say, no way will America get pulled into World War III. But maybe they will. History shows that America was eventually pulled into World War II. World War II began in 1939 when Hitler invaded Poland and then many other countries in Europe. Please focus on the fact that America did not immediately join the war in 1939 or in 1940. By 1940, Poland, Belgium, the Netherlands, and France had already been captured by Hitler. This was shocking to the civilized world, but not enough for America to join and fight back. England declared war on Germany right after Poland was attacked, and then England came under attack from Germany. England came under attack, and America supplied war materials, but did not declare war on Germany until 2 years later in 1941. The European war raged on until December the 7th, 1941, when Japan bombed Pearl Harbor. America, in general, did not want to enter a European war, and that's been wise advice for many, many years. But we got pulled into World War I, we got pulled into World War II. What do you expect might happen in World War III? Well, let's just watch and see what God tells us. Then, on December the 7th, 1941, America suffered a shocking attack on American soil at Pearl Harbor. And suddenly, America leapt into action and the European war. The very next day, on December the 8th, America declared war on Japan, and then on December the 11th, a few days later, declared war on Germany. And so America was pulled into World War II, whether they wanted to or not. That next day was full of war preparations all across the land. Almost no one pays any attention to what God has told us will happen in the future. Those who do pay attention can find a simple God-given war map in Daniel chapter 11. God has given us early major end-time wars, like the Afghanistan and 9/11 war in Daniel 11:40. There it gives us the time setting of the time of the end. It starts with at the time of the end, meaning in the years before Christ returns to the planet and to rule all nations. The next verse tells us about a World War III sized conflict in the Middle East. Daniel 11:41. And he, the mighty many ships superpower from verse 40, shall enter the glorious land, Israel, and many countries shall be overthrown. When a military leader overthrows many countries, it must be considered a World War III sized war. Right? Just picture many Middle Eastern Arab nations being overthrown. Who else might get involved in the wars? Right? Well, obviously Israel is involved because they get attacked. But who else might get involved to help America with this monumental task, right? And who else might get involved in opposing this, America in the Middle East? So now let's dissect verse 41 for deeper understanding. Verse 41 reads, and he shall enter the glorious land. We should ask ourselves, who is this he in verse 40. The answer is given to us, verse 40, right? He of 41 is the same mighty, super powerful military commander who accomplishes the wars in verse 40. Verse 40, at the time of the end, the king of the south, Arab terrorists, shall attack him, and the king of the north, meaning from European descent, shall come against him like a whirlwind, and with chariots and with horsemen, and with many ships. And he shall enter the countries and overwhelm them and pass through, meaning to withdraw. So verse 40 tells us some of the successful wars of this mighty military commander in the end time that uses many ships. So think, who's the superpower in the end time with many ships? The superpower, obviously, the greatest number of aircraft carrier, right, fleets is the United States of America, because it projects the strength around the world. This then is the same many-ship military leader that enters the glorious land in verse 41. The glorious land is Bible language for the Holy Land, or the nation of Israel. Modern history shows that Arab nations have been attacking Israel since 1948. So we have this. Arabs attack Israel frequently, and we tend to lose track of the news, right? Something big happens last week. We focus on that for a couple of days. Then something other big happens, and we drop the first one, we start focusing on the second one. Well, the Arab-Israeli wars have gone on and on and on, and Israel has won them all, and we all get like, well, that's Israel, that's their problem, they're way over there, that doesn't really affect us. So modern history shows that Arabs have been attacking Israel since 1948, right? Which is pretty frequently when you look at the list, right? If you Google Arab-Israeli war, you will find that Arab nations have started major wars with Israel, 1948, 1956, 1967, 1973, 1982, 2006. And interestingly, nothing much since 2006, except if you're a news watcher, you'll see that missiles get fired into Israel like every month. But it's just a handful, and they get knocked out of the sky, and Israel threatens to invade them, and it all settles down, and no major war since 2006. So since 2006, many of these rocket barrages have been launched at Israeli populations. Most annoying, most upsetting, Israel is prepared. But is it possible that 1.6 billion Israel haters have changed their mind? They don't want to kill Israel anymore. They don't want to drive Israel into the ocean anymore. Or are they waiting for an Iranian nuclear bomb to push Israel into the sea? If you watch the news, Iran gets closer and closer and closer to having a nuclear weapon, and openly wants to drop it on Israel and destroy them, doesn't matter who dies, and then there'll be no more infidels on what they consider to be Arab soil. So God has forewarned us that a mighty, many ships commander will enter Israel and overthrow many Arab nations. 1941, in Daniel 11:41, he shall enter the glorious land Israel, and many countries, many Arab countries shall be overthrown. Verse 42, and he'll stretch out his hand against the many countries, and the land of Egypt shall not escape. Verse 43, he shall power over the treasures of gold and silver and all the precious things of Egypt, and the Libyans and the Ethiopians as well. So we should remember that when Hitler invaded France in World War II, he took total control over the precious things of France. At this moment, the enemy nations aligned against America, think about it, who are America's big enemies? Russia, China, North Korea, Iran, many other Arab nations. They all desperately want someone to bring America down. And many of them were hoping and thought that it was happening in 9/11, and it didn't happen that way. But there are many nations out there Many enemy nations are aligned against America. They're just not bold enough to step right forward and start attacking America openly. Iran openly wants nuclear weapons and wants to cripple America and destroy Israel. The giant question that God does not address. God does give us information, some things he doesn't tell us. What he doesn't address is what kind of attack against America and Israel would cause America to capture many Arab nations. Now, when you play that slowly through your brain and you go, wait, the America of today is going to capture, with boots on the ground, many Arab nations in the Middle East. No, that will never happen in 100 years, right? Well, God says it will happen. It is totally out of the question that slowly situations would deteriorate little by little, year by year, year by year, and then finally the Middle East would get overtaken. It's not likely to happen that way. If America suffered an enormous crushing attack, most of the Arab nations and 1.6 billion Muslims would wildly rejoice as they rejoiced on 9/11 back in 2001. So if an enormous crushing attack occurred on American soil, would that be enough to cause America to invade and capture many Arab nations and save Israel from being destroyed? God doesn't tell us specifically, does he? God's word shows that in the end times we can expect sudden destructive events. Right? Now, you can already think of a couple of sudden destructive events. Pearl Harbor was a sudden destructive event. 9/11 was a sudden destructive event. And in both cases, boom, we went to war, like almost instantly. In 1 Thessalonians 5:2, Paul writes, you know perfectly that the day of the Lord, the coming of Jesus Christ to earth, shall come as a thief in the night, verse 3, for when they say peace and safety. Now there are peace talks going on in back channels all around the world. When they say peace and safety, when Neville Chamberlain and Hitler met, they said to each other, peace and safety. There's not going to be a war in Europe, right? And that was in, and Neville Chamberlain came home and they had, peace in our time on the newspapers, and then sudden destruction, he invaded Poland, right? So Paul is pointing out a biblical realization throughout man's history that people talk peace just before they do some sudden destructive act. Pearl Harbor, like I say, and 9/11 were both sudden destruction events. If America suffered another sudden destruction event from Arab nations, or from one Arab nation that then the other Arab nations got behind, an attack far greater than Pearl Harbor and 9/11 combined, which we can't really imagine what that would be. But we could see how many Arab nations would then get captured. So what God foretells in the Bible ends up happening the way God described it. God is God. God's watching what's going on down here. God foretold the fall of Babylon to the Medes and the Persians. That happened right on schedule. If you want to see that, you can go and look in Daniel. And the handwriting on the wall, Daniel's called in to explain the handwriting on the wall. And at that very moment that he was explaining what it meant, the Medes and the Persian soldiers were coming into the capital city of Babylon to destroy it, and Babylon went under that very night. So God foretold that Alexander the Great would overthrow the Medes and the Persians, and that happened right on schedule. God is foretelling that many Arab nations will get captured in the end time, right? And again, it seems impossible that that could happen, but God said it, and it most assuredly will happen. He'll enter the glorious land to save Israel, and many countries, Arab countries, will be overthrown. The facts from history are that America got pulled into World War II by Pearl Harbor, a sudden destruction attack. It's also a fact that America was pulled into a 20-year war with Afghanistan by the sudden destruction attack of the Twin Towers. Israeli and American enemies are growing rapidly around the world in numbers and in military strength. If we believe the God of the Bible, we should not be surprised if America gets pulled into World War III with boots on the ground in the Middle East.